Hello, hey, hi. Welcome back to the Uncultured Cinematic Universe. It's been a minute,
It's been
but we're
so long.
but we're back. Each episode we take a look at classic and iconic films from two perspectives, that of the diehard fan and that of the uncultured who's never seen it before until this very moment in time. We're your hosts, Justin and Joe, and today we're talking about the 1984 black comedy horror classic, Gremlins. Joe, it's Gremlins. I um I hope you took lots of notes and you buckled up for this one. This was a treat.
I took a lot of notes, and pretty much all of them end in several exclamation points. Um, but yeah, you are the cultured one here. I had
Yes.
never seen Gremlins. I think my household was more of like a on the Honey I Shrunk the Kids side of the kooky 80s
Mhm.
scientist family spectrum, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
I think you're either one or the other.
It's true. I landed squarely in the middle between
Yeah.
both of those camps. I remember watching both of those movies. Um, it has a little bit of the kooky, a little bit of the creepy,
Mhm.
but this one leads definitely more into the spooky of bits. But
This
yeah.
this movie made me think of, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids,
Hmm.
for, like, the family bits of it, and then, um, did you speaking of, like well, we haven't spoken of it, but, like, I just realized that Howie Mandel voices the main, gremlin in Gremlin, not
Yeah.
Gremlin, like Mogwai,
Yeah.
and he's also in that Little Monsters movie. Did you ever see that?
Yeah. Yeah. That
That
was
that movie's kind of like the other mixture,
sure.
create this movie for me.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, that was one of like the recommended movies that popped up at the end
Yeah,
of this one is like since you watch this you should go watch Little Monsters.
the Mandel Cinematic Universe.
We'll get into that eventually. I can only imagine. But yeah, so as a reminder, you can watch us on YouTube if you aren't already, or listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the whole gamut. Just search for the Uncultured Cinematic Universe, and also be sure to check us out on Instagram at UCU Podcast. Get us on there. Give us a like. We'll give you a follow back. We'll do the whole thing. We'll chit chat.
We post every couple days, but it's like it's good content.
It's great content. You'll love it. Yeah, so without further ado, be sure to keep your Mogwai dry, hungry, and in the dark. And let's get into Gremlins. Joe, let's talk about it, man. Uh, what were your some initial thoughts from this?
Okay, okay. Initial thoughts were mainly centered around just like incredulity of every single scene.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I don't this movie, this town in this movie feels like it takes place in another dimension where people act differently than they would in real life.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. That's Hollywood, man.
and then my other secondary thought, I was texting you about this. I needed more Judge Reinhold in this movie.
I
Kind
have
of
a good note
messed with,
about
and
yeah.
then nothing.
I got a good note about the judge, and we'll talk about him. We got judge talk later, and we'll dive into that.
Welcome back to Judge Corner.
No one puts Judge in a corner. Is he Joe? Is he still with us?
I looked this up. It seems like we haven't seen a lot of Judge in the last few years, but yes, he is still with us.
He's
He's
still
kind of
with us. Yeah,
he's raking in the Santa Claus residuals.
that's true. Yeah, which is funny because this movie was 1984. This movie
Mhm.
was released June 8th, 1984. A summer romp.
Right.
Getting ready for
Not
the impending Christmas season. But yeah,
The
so
80s are just an insane time because like not a lot of Christmas movies are coming out in the middle of summer.
yeah, it's a weird choice. It definitely was a weird choice. But yeah, I know you texted me this during the movie that Judge Reinhold is supposed to be 23 in this movie,
In
and like maybe 6 to 8 years later in the first Santa Claus movie, he's like 40. You know,
He's like the dopey stepdad that just wants the hot dog whistle.
that's true. The Oscar weenie whistle. Yep.
Incredible.
Yeah. So let me hit you with some numbers.
Give it to me.
Yeah, so released in the summer of 1984, the 1984 summer blockbuster hit, uh, one after another, gangbusters after gangbusters films just coming out left and right.
What are some of the other 84 blockbusters?
So actually, this movie came out the same week as Ghostbusters.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So it was a very slimy weekend at the box office.
absolutely it was. Yeah, so this movie has a tight runtime, 106 minutes.
Mhm.
And all right, let's break out your calculators here. So $11 million budget, which is relatively small,
It's pretty good. Yeah.
but at the box office they did 212.
That is insane.
Quite good for especially going against Ghostbusters at the same time. You know, um, but yeah.
I
So
would say Ghostbusters probably won that week at the box office. I don't have the numbers in front of me yet, but like just because it has probably more star power. But I would also say that they both have a level of staying power as well. We're still talking about Ghostbusters, definitely, but we're also still talking about Gremlins.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, here. So since you asked, I just pulled this up. So notable popular movies that released in 1984. We got
Yeah.
Gremlins. We got A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Terminator,
Oh my god.
Never Ending Story,
Oh wow.
Ghostbusters, Children of the Corn, 16 Candles, Beverly Hills Cop, The Karate Kid, Temple of Doom. Like the list goes on.
Yeah,
It was
this
just
is like 1984 is kind of the year with the movies that everyone thinks of when they think of 80s movies.
80s, absolutely. Yeah. And this leans heavy into the 80s stigma. We'll dig into those. But so upon this most recent rewatch, I'd seen this countless times growing up, but I never really paid attention to the credits like I do now as an adult. So, the intro starts playing and all that kind of stuff, and you notice that this movie has a stacked fucking deck of folks involved with this movie. Steven Spielberg as executive producer,
Hmm.
directed by Joe Dante, who went on to do the sequel to this movie. He did Inner Space with Martin Short. I love that movie. That movie's great.
Was that
He
the Dennis Quaid one?
Yes,
Mm.
The Burbs with Tom Hanks, and then in the '90s he went on to do Small Soldiers.
He's
Uh,
in kind of that black comedy
yeah,
area.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then here's the big one. So written by Chris Columbus,
Hmm.
came from hot off the heels of The Goonies as a writer on The Goonies. He had his directorial debut, I think, a little after this or a little before, I can't remember, but with Adventures in Babysitting. And then he went on to do Home Alone 1 and 2, Mrs. Doubtfire, the first two Harry Potter movies, Rent, Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Chris Columbus can fucking get it, dude.
Chris Columbus is amazing. I love that Rent stands out from his filmography like that. Yeah, I guess I was thinking of the Goonies quite a lot throughout this
Mm-hmm.
movie because
Mm-hmm.
that was another pretty popular kind of mainstay in my household. Like if we're talking about like the 80s movies that we grew up on,
Yeah.
that was one of the top five for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Um,
100% easily. Yeah.
you see traces of that pretty easily in this movie, not just through the crew, but you got like Corey Feldman in there. You have the idea of like a slightly fantastical setting where these kids are just trying to navigate some stuff.
Yeah.
That seemed to be a big theme in the 80s with shows like Stranger Things kind of
Mm-hmm.
taking advantage
Leaning
of
into that,
nostalgia there.
definitely. Yeah, I love that this takes place in like anywhere USA, but it's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
obviously like the Midwest or Northeast, where like winters are always cold and snowy.
This
Halloween is always like primo, fall leaves everywhere. The springs and summers are immaculate. It's
one of
just
my
anywhere
notes
USA.
one of my notes is that this is like the most destitute town in America. Is everyone in this town on the brink of poverty and homelessness? Because like
It seems like it, right?
the main our main character works in a bank, and like every single day people are like on their last dime
Yeah.
shuttling their children to and from their house and the bank, so that they can make sure that they can still live in their house, while the one older widow just like slowly eats up more and more of the town with
Yeah.
her ruthless landlording.
I know she is definitely a bad character, and I remember you texting me about it that you just were in love with Mrs. Deagle. She is definitely giving just Wicked Witch vibes.
Okay, yeah, it's right off the bat getting into this movie, and we can do like the plot description and stuff, but like there were immediate direct Indiana Jones references,
Oh yeah.
and then also it felt very Wizard of Oz, and I told you that. With she's literally wanting to kill his dog.
Yeah, like I'll get you, my pretty. Yeah, like she was hamming it up. She was living for it. One last note here about the overview, and I thought this was really impressive. Kathleen Kennedy was a producer on this flick. Goes
Why
on.
do I know Kathleen Kennedy?
She is, or just I don't remember, but Lucasfilm president.
Oh,
She was also a
oh,
founder.
she did. She like basically made Star Wars what it was in the past 5 years, right?
Correct. She
Okay.
helped along with like Dave Filoni and all of them, those folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was also a co-founder of the Amblin Entertainment. You know, Amblin with the ETs and um,
It's
the
a good
Steven
thing to be a
Spielberg of it all.
co-founder of.
Yeah, big time there. So this movie absolutely had, you know, someone sold their soul to the devil to get this stacked, you know, deck of producers, directors, writers, and then you know we got some great actors in there too. Like you mentioned, the judge shows up. Um, Phoebe Kates makes an appearance, fresh off of Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Phoebe Cates is in an entirely different movie than everyone else in this
She
movie.
is. She's playing it like dark
There are
Hallmark
some
movie.
dark ass moments with Phoebe Cates in this movie.
Yeah, I love it. And then yeah, like you mentioned, you texted me that like Feldman is in this. Like, of course, yeah. This was one of his first breakout roles into
This is
film.
little Feldman. Like
This
this is
is
preteen Feldman.
this is baby Feldman, and it's I mentioned this to Ryan while we were watching it. I was like, it's so weird that like 6 to 7 years from now, he's gonna be the voice of Donatello in the second Ninja Turtles movie. You know, he grew up so fast. You
His
know,
most famous role by far.
he grew up right before our eyes. We're so proud of him. Um, much love to you, Corey Feldman. Yeah,
Hmm.
so let's go ahead and dig into this trailer. Let's look at this. This is fun. Um, it's peak '80s, like you mentioned.
Steven Spielberg presents Gremlins.
Yes, he does.
Billy Peltzer has a nice home.
Does he?
Billy, is that you?
Yeah, Mom, it's me.
A nice job.
Stress.
A nice girl.
If you're not doing anything this Thursday night, maybe you'd like to go out on a date with me?
I'd love to.
And loving parents who are about to give him
You're gonna like this. No, don't shake it. We're gonna have to open it now. It won't wait till Christmas.
the most unusual gift he ever got.
What is it?
It's your new pet.
Come on, Barney, be a good dog. My dad gave it to me.
But there are a few things to keep in mind. If you expose it to the light, you may hurt it. If you get it wet, it will multiply.
All that from water? They got wet?
Yeah, plain water.
And most important, no matter how much they beg, never, never let them eat after midnight. Because when they do, they change. They become clever,
Yeah.
mischievous,
What's going on here?
and dangerous.
Gremlins, huh? Little monsters.
Right.
Hundreds of them.
Well, I don't know, maybe thousands.
They've been here too. Billy, what are these things? Where do they come from?
Look, I know it sounds crazy, I know. But in a few hours, you're gonna have a major disaster.
Joe, I'm going to pause it right here. Did you notice who this guy is right here?
Oh, that's Jonathan Banks.
Damn right it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have never seen him like not old and crackled and
Head bald. Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took me a second, but then I gasped.
Yep. It's a good one. Breaking Bad for you folks. Ermin. Oh, wait, what's his first name? Mike Ehrmantraut. Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Mike. All right. Continue.
On your hands.
Gremlins, directed by Joe Dante. They'll be expecting you.
Whoa. Yeah, dude. So much fun. So much fun. That's a great trailer.
just coming off of that, you heard it a little bit in the trailer, but I think one of the best things about this movie is the little score that kicks in for the
Yeah,
Gremlins.
dude. Yeah.
Music is so perfect.
It's
Uh,
so like mischievous and iconic because it's such just like a simple little run, but
it's
it's
somehow like spooky Christmas.
yeah, absolutely it is. It's I didn't realize at first too, just like how heavy it leans into the Christmas motif. And it's just, it's the gifts and the trees and stuff. I was like, "Oh yeah, this actually really does lead you in to feel like it's a Christmas movie." And then it just takes this really weird turn. It's so silly. But yeah, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's do the Joe plot go. Just I'm gonna give you here. Hang on. Let's see. What did we do last time when it's a straightforward movie?
I think I can knock it out in a minute.
Oh,
I can hit like beats, and then we can talk about individual stuff.
okay. We'll give you 1 minute on the clock.
I know this is going to go by in like 10 seconds because time does not never goes faster than when you're trying to
It's
do a
true.
watch session.
Now you know your main problem. You always stick too far ahead at the front.
I know.
Blow
I gotta
past
get
the
out. I gotta get out the basic premises real
get the
quick.
floor play out the way and just let's get into it, Joe. Okay?
Okay.
All right, you ready? Here you go. In 3, 2, 1, start.
Okay. Our main character is Billy. He's a teenager in small town USA during Christmas. His dad is a down on his luck inventor who gets him uh, a small creature from Chinatown that's kind of like a furry little cute pet. Named Gizmo. It's a Mogwai. The guy in Chinatown warns that there's 3 rules with Mogwais. You can't expose them to light, you can't get water on them, and then you can't feed them after midnight or else things might happen. Billy and his family immediately do all of these things without even thinking about them, and then are surprised when things start to happen. Several additional Mogwais come out of Gizmo and kind of hatch. They eventually become gremlins, which are like reptilian versions of Gizmo. They then go and wreak havoc around the town, and Billy and his friend/girlfriend Kate have to go and stop them. It's kind of just like shenanigans during Christmas time and a little violent, and they eventually defeat them with the power of sunlight.
Well done. The power of sunlight. It all comes down to that.
This movie really devolves into mayhem pretty much at the halfway point.
Yeah.
I timed it as I was watching it. You don't see an actual gremlin until almost the exact halfway point of the movie.
Right. Yeah. Up until that point, they're just like fuzzy. All you see is just fuzzy little Gizmo as the nice little mild mannered Mogwai. And then once he reproduces, it starts to go a little bit kooky because you can tell that the rest of those little Mogwai are little shits.
So I told you my thoughts around like no one in this movie acts like an actual human being. It feels like
Correct.
a different version of reality.
Yep.
Because first of all, why is the why is the inventor father who can't invent anything useful looking in Chinatown for a random pet for his son who clearly already has a dog that he is very invested in? Why are we getting another pet? Second of all,
Yeah.
I'm gonna shit on this movie.
Do it.
When they get this strange creature that should not exist, everyone takes it on face value. That's fine. That's fine. This movie exists in an alternate reality. They they then immediately proceed to dribble water on it. Things pop out of this Mogwai, and then Corey Feldman basically gets bored with it and goes
Immediately.
he's like, no, I'm good. Like,
He's like, no,
I
it's
don't
cool.
care about any of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
He immediately loses interest. And he's just like, no, it's cool, man. It's whatever.
it's insane. It's my notes get like progressively more and more like all caps
Cynical.
during this.
Yeah.
Mainly centered around like, is everyone in this town high on something?
Yeah, that's my read on it, right? You touched on it at the beginning of like, is everyone in this town is down on their luck somehow,
Mhm.
right? Is this an old like coal ore smelting town and like everyone's just like inhaling all these horrible fumes and stuff and makes them a little bit dumber?
It
I don't know.
feels kind of Silent Hilly towards the end because
Uh,
it gets kind of misty and it seems like the town is kind of very much enclosed in
yeah.
a bubble, and like there's no one coming in from the outside. One of my notes towards the end was like, how is the American government not like nuking this entire area yet? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I wrote down several times some sort of version of like, for humanity to survive, Gizmo must die. Um,
Is that what you were hoping was going to happen?
I'm afraid we'll have to kill Gizmo because that's the resolution of this film. Like,
He's the origin, right? So like by like vampire logic or whatever, do you kill the main one? And
yeah,
like does it happen?
they
Yeah, I could see how
they
that
end
would.
up they end up like killing all the gremlins, and they kind of solve that. But the very next day, this could just happen again because these kids are so careless. I did have some questions for you. If we're trying to delve into like the logic, the science of gremlins,
Yeah.
we have Gizmo, who
Yes.
I honestly loved.
Of
Gizmo.
course.
I
Of
I was
course.
I was thinking going into this, I was like, puppet, no, love it, love the design, love
Mhm.
his look, iconic, paved the
Iconic.
way for Baby Yoda, all that good stuff.
Definitely did. Yep.
I love that he sings.
Mm-hmm. It's
There's
real cute.
just he'll just like randomly just like start like humming in high pitched notes and stuff, and they'll
Mhm.
just listen to him sing, and he puts on these little performances. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that he is potentially as intelligent as a human. Like they
He can
talk,
communicate. Yeah.
right? He's
Yeah.
saying words and they're treating him as like a pet. It's strange, but it's also like 80s magic, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the science here, we know that nothing I say here has not been like delved into
Of
by
course.
Gremlins fans a million
Yeah.
times in the
Mm-hmm.
past 30 years.
Yep.
We know that Gizmo produces the other Mogwais that
Yes.
then become gremlins after they eat after
Correct.
midnight.
Yeah.
Can Gizmo himself ever become a gremlin?
100%. Yeah. He's not immune to
How
it.
would he do that?
How would he become a gremlin?
Yeah, is it just like so? Maybe we have to back up and go through the rules, right? Because
Yeah.
the rules are insane and they don't make sense, but I also like how they're set up to where like they become key plot points throughout the movie because
Definitely.
they can't be in some sort of like direct sunlight or bright light. That becomes the weapon
Yep.
against them, right?
Mhm.
They can't be wet. That becomes how they multiply.
Yep.
And then they can't be fed after midnight, because that's what turns them from the fuzzy Gizmo stage to the reptilian gremlin stage, right?
Correct. Correct.
So I guess following that logic, if you feed Gizmo after midnight, he will turn into a gremlin.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's open and shut.
Okay.
Yeah. He's not immune to it. He's still a Mogwai all the same. He
It,
came from another wet Mogwai at some point down the line, you know?
so, well, that's the thing. Like, you in the chrysalis stage of
Mm,
the Mogwai or whatever it is called before they're in the chrysalis, the Gizmo fuzzy stage, he seems to be pretty nice, but the ones that come out of him are like immediately evil and immediately wanting to transform into their final gremlin evolution, right?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. They're a little aggressive for sure, and they definitely have some dickish tendencies.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my issues with the rules are that
They're too vague, right? They're too generic.
there's light everywhere.
Mhm.
There's water everywhere. What counts as them getting wet? There's water in the air.
Mm.
And it's also always after midnight, if you think
It's
about
somewhere. Yeah. It's
it.
always yeah.
So
That's the main thing. It's like after midnight
do
to
they
who? Do they know? Do they recognize
does
the
it like
time zones? Do they follow that? Do they follow fucking daylight savings?
maybe it's a
Right?
Groundhog Day situation where it's like 6 a.m. is randomly like the turning point.
Yeah,
Um,
right. It could be. Who knows? Do they follow just the one meridian timeline dateline? Is that it? Is
right,
midnight always? Yeah, you're right. I don't know.
right. So if
Maybe they could be alien. They
they're on
could.
a plane going around the Earth, like they could just be feasting the entire time, and they're good.
As long as they're staying behind the midnight line, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know what, Joe?
It's
Before we
very
get
vampiric in that way. Like we mentioned, like there's kind of like the source and the children of all this. There's a level of like sunlight versus darkness. There's
it's great.
it's kind of like little vampire Furbies.
Absolutely, it is. And there's probably there's probably some parallels you could draw into of like gluttony, sins of the flesh. Like you could dive into it and cut every
Definitely
which way.
like, oh, this is a metaphor for capitalism vibes in
It's a
this.
metaphor for capitalism, or it's a parable, or drawing parallels to the Bible. Like it could.
Mhm.
Yeah, who knows? Is Gizmo the Jesus of the story? He very well could be.
I would
Jo-
love to dive into that theory.
Joe, before we go any deeper, before we get into any headier territory, let's do our cocktail hour.
Cocktail
Let's
hour.
talk to me about the cock and tail that you got in your hand right now. What is that?
Listen, I tend to like a gin. I tend
Sure.
to like more bitter than sweet.
Mm,
Something that you can sip because I'm the type of cocktail drinker where I will just drink during pauses in the conversation almost just automatically. I
absolutely.
need something where I'm taking like tiny sips of it or else it's going to be gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
This sounds like I have a problem. I don't.
No.
Um, Let me explain to you what's happening in this one. So this guy is called the Midnight Mogwai.
Ooh.
It is one part Aperol,
Of course.
one part blue curacao. Get that on you. Half a part Fernet,
Fernet.
and then one part gin.
Ooh, and that kind of makes it that nice little bluish green color.
It's got a bluish, like murky bluish green color, and it tastes licoricey.
Yeah, I could see the licorice flavor.
Hmm.
That's what a gremlin I would think would taste like. Just like that bitter root kind of flavor.
Yeah.
Chewy a
Yeah.
little bit.
That and just like blow some cigar smoke onto it for that
Oh,
smokiness.
absolutely. Yeah, just take it into any open bar where you can still smoke wherever that may be. But
I'd
yeah,
like to talk eventually about how like throughout the 80s and maybe before, like the ideas of like smoking and drinking were just like the worst things you could do.
mhm.
And it was like the ultimate like mayhem in the world. It's very much like Pinocchio, Pleasure Island. Uh,
Yeah,
these little creatures who are like smoking cigars and playing poker.
yeah, it's great.
That's what
I
they take
I
more than to do.
I can't wait to talk about the bar scene. But yeah, so I went a different approach, but my name is similar. So mine is Mogwai at midnight. So similar,
It is
right?
not Mogwai at midnight.
That's what I called it.
Oh,
So we touched on this about the town, right? It's a good old American town, very blue collar, and especially like the one bar in town. I imagine they drink a lot of this. They drink a lot of Pabst Blue Ribbon, right?
that's a shitty bar. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I did, I took this and I loved the idea of the very end or towards the middle, when Stripe, the bastard Mogwai,
The
jumps into the pool or jumps into the fountain at the end. And I was like, you know what? That should be like a little sidecar bomb situation. So what I got here, so this is going in there. This is a little red and green and white, a little Christmas spirit. What I got in here, I got eggnog because it's a Christmas movie. The red is grenadine and the green is melon liqueur, and then some whiskey just for some extra bite.
Justin, shut up.
I
This is
know.
amazing.
So, cheers to you, Joe. I'm gonna do it over here.
You got to get it on camera. Wait. Your hand's blocking it.
Oh, here we go.
Show it. There you go.
Yeah, and then dun, 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 dun.
And then immediate like plumes of smoke and fizz. Yeah.
And then like green LED light glowing everywhere.
Yeah.
That's not that bad. That's not
I,
that bad.
I did like about this movie that like the premise is insane. The characters are insane, but then it takes those and it just does fun stuff with them.
Absolutely.
It exists. I love a movie with a set of rules, just simple rules that we're living in, right? And
Yep.
this movie literally has 3 rules that we're living in. And so that's why, when the head gremlin, after we've like killed the initial batch of gremlins, except for him, when
Mhm.
he jumps into the pool, you're like, oh, fuck. because a couple drops of water onto the original Gizmo was like complete chaos. What's it going to be like if this guy gets completely drenched in water
and just stays there? I love that scene of just him jumping in, and you see him just like curled up, diving deeper, and then they pan out, and then the whole pool is just like smoke and like lightning, and it's amazing.
Anytime they show the like reptilian gremlins, it's usually like from the waist up or whatever, so you can kind of tell they're being like puppet operated. But I loved the shots that they had of like them. There were like a few far between ones where it was like full body gremlin shots. It's kind of like did you ever see that video or whatever where it's like showing Kermit the Frog riding a bike? How weird it looks, where he's like he's
got legs,
by anything.
Yeah.
It's this like bizarre. They look like little reptile babies running around. And I did love. There's maybe one shot in the movie where they're running around on the street where it was clearly stop motion. I loved that integration as well.
That was a nice touch. And then in the movie theater, when they're like approaching the screen, like chasing them out, like that's like hand drawn animated. You can kind of tell that they're kind of like approaching the screen. Super cool. I love that touch. They did everything. They threw everything at this movie.
Lots of cool styles of animation, and then the gremlins themselves. I like how we kind of alternate between like, in terms of the personalities and levels of intelligence of the gremlins. They're either like primal monsters or they're just like scumbag guys. They're just bros.
And then in between, there's like the hyper intelligence a little bit. They can communicate. They can sit in a chair and like watch a movie. Like it's hilarious, the gamut that they run.
Like they alternate between like murderous plague and just like the worst people you know.
Yeah, just like good time partier scumbag folks. I love it. So I wanted to talk about some of my cornerstones and connections to this movie before we dive into a little bit more about the production and history and stuff about the film. So this movie is deeply ingrained in my memory. I remember watching this as a kid and just loving the free-for-all like zaniness that takes place, but also at the same time being like genuinely frightened by those creatures once they turn gremlin form. Like this
movie's a little scary.
Yeah, they're really creepy looking, right? Their eyes and their fangs and even their like three-handed claws kind of thing. They're real sharp. They're just little bastards that'll get you. But I remember like really, really wanting a gizmo, whether it be real because I was a kid, or the little stuffed animals that you could get for funsies.
Oh, I'm sure this was just like merchandising city.
Oh, absolutely. Bring in the bucks, man. Merchandise, everything just ran the gamut. So this movie sowed in a deep, deep disdain for "Do You Hear What I Hear?" the Christmas song. I have never liked it since, but because that scene, okay, so for those of you who don't recall, that song, "Do You Hear What I Hear?" I don't remember who's singing it or what the original is. It's that classic Christmas song, but it's playing while Billy's mom is alone in the house and she has to go full, predator commando on these gremlins that are attacking her inside the house. And it's so tense and like horror movie of like, there's something in my house that wants to attack me and I have to like creep through around the corner while this song is playing. And it's such a juxtaposition, but it always like left like the ick in my brain and my body. Anytime I heard that song, it's just like, ugh, I don't like it. It's changed.
The song is Bing Crosby, I believe. I just looked up.
Okay.
Something. I want to talk about that scene in particular because that scene kind of feels like the apex point of this movie for me.
But it's not. Like, it's like 30 minutes in or like 45 minutes in, but it's so good.
This is like a clean hour and a half movie, and so much of the end is just kind of like mayhem and chasing around. But this is where they kind of slow down, and this is where I was like... So going into this movie myself, I knew the basic concept. I knew that like Gizmo somehow becomes a gremlin or creates a gremlin, and there's like the rules and stuff. I really didn't know anything about like the actual human characters in the story.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, So this is the first time the Gremlins are actually transforming at this house. The mom's kind of home alone. She's kind of clueless as to what's actually happening up in the attic. And I was like, how dark are they actually going to get with this? Because they could just have, this could be the type of movie where like she gets brutally murdered and it's almost played for laughs in a way. I did love the progression of this scene because she hears a noise in the attic and she immediately grabs the biggest kitchen
I
she
know.
can possibly find and
It's
is ready
so cool.
to kill. Like
I love the backstory that paints for this woman, that she's been through it. You can tell she's over her husband's bullshit of like, yeah, honey, you're a great inventor. Someday it'll work out for you. She's at home doing like Billy Banks taekwondo training. She's ready to kill and kick some ass. I love that you caught that immediately. Like as soon as she hears some weird shit goes on, big fucking knife. She's ready.
Phoebe Kates and the husband in this movie are in two completely different movies from everyone else. And we can talk about it. But talking about the scene with the mom, some almost like clear comparisons, and I can check my dates here because this may have actually come out after, but it very much felt exactly like Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. Like down to the kind of sweaty, mullety haircut with the curls that Sigourney Weaver has in those movies. Mm-hmm. The mom becomes some sort of like sci-fi shoot 'em up person for a good 10 minutes. She kind of owns a little segment of this movie, and it's just from the little bit of research I've done on this movie, I kind of wanted to go into this episode a little bit clean, but I did know that parents took their kids to see this movie because it was PG, and one of the biggest complaints was that it got way too violent with the gremlin parts.
Yeah.
And I imagine this is probably where that starts to happen because she is knifing gremlins left and right through their face and then tops it off with putting a gremlin in the microwave and not even taking a beat before sticking that fucker on high and watching him explode.
So gross and brutal.
All while Do You Hear What I Hear is playing in the background.
And that's why like it just sticks in my brain. But yeah, dude, she's got the best kills throughout the whole movie, and they're all back to back. She throws one in the big juicer and just like blends them up. She stabs another one to death, the microwave, and then, well, those are the only three that she kills. And then Billy comes in and decapitates one with the fucking Chekhov's sword.
One of the things that I texted you, I was watching this movie. So they live in this house where the dad's like kind of this kooky inventor and he's always away on conferences and stuff. But their entire house is just like decked out in these random ass inventions that are supposed to be like making their lives easier, like an egg cracker or like a random ass orange blender thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why are there so many of these things that don't work? Why are we spending so much time on them? And then it hit me about 20 minutes into the movie. I was like, oh, I know the gremlins are going to happen. We're going to have a little like kill for each of these machines. Like there were a few scenes with the swords on the wall falling, and I was like, okay, someone's going to pick up the sword at one point.
Yeah.
Because this is going to become mayhem, and they need to like go home alone on these gremlins, or the other way around. Like I truly didn't know if the gremlins were about to like viciously murder a bunch of people.
Yeah, like this movie definitely could have taken either approach, right? And I think they didn't know really which way to go. This movie definitely could have been really effective as just like a standalone one house invasion kind of movie, and it would have been great. Like you said, they could have explored every invention and leaned real hard on that. And like the one invention that they keep bringing up, the bathroom buddy, could have been the one that like makes the final kill.
And right? that's where you kind of draw the line. Like, is this more of like a camp horror classic, or is it like a dark comedy sci-fi type?
It's both, honestly. They lean really hard in the silly a lot of places, and that's why I think I liked it, because it is so silly and wacky and just peak 80s, across the board. Like the 80s definitely were a time for exploration and invention, and this leans hard into that. Think Pee-wee's Big Adventure, around the same time. You know, he had the same kind of Rube Goldberg machines in his house, but they fucking worked. Not this guy. But
There was an age of like puppety kind of slimy monsters that so you think of like stuff like the Neverending Story, you think
yeah,
of Dark Crystal, really like heavy Jim Henson-y style stuff
hmm
where they can create this level of like movement and characters with personality with things that are very clearly physically puppets like
yeah, definitely.
and so
Yeah,
you get a lot more, especially in that age of technology, you get a lot more opportunities for the human actors to like interact with these things
hmm
instead of it being like a kind of a crappy CG type thing where they can't really like touch it and fight
yeah.
with. Instead,
That's
mom is like battling with gremlins on the floor of this house.
And it's so cool, and that's what makes it so visceral and real, is because they are real puppets. She's acting against a real thing that she is stabbing, probably, or throwing, literally tossing this lifeless puppet into a microwave. But I wanted to touch on this. This is a really cool thing that I loved. So I think this started, or it might have been a couple other pieces, but this continued like the '80s and then into the '90s trope of the teen lead in the movie
Mhm.
having the absolute dopest fucking bedroom you could ever imagine. It's always in the coolest places. It's always in like the detached garage or in the attic that's converted. Billy has the coolest bedroom in the entire world, and it's
he
so rad.
he occupies the top floor of this house basically.
Yeah, and it's so cool. I mean, and you want to ask more questions, like this is the '80s and he's got his first big boy job at the bank, but he's still living at home with mom and dad. Shouldn't he be moving out? But, '84 was, the Reagan era. It's crazy. Who knows what was
Yeah,
going on there?
I mean, obviously, like I wasn't around then, but I'd wonder how this movie is maybe like commenting on or joking about the political, financial, whatever climate of the time. That's just
Oh
completely
yeah.
gone over my head.
Oh, dude, definitely. There's bits of that. There's bits of that in Little Shop of Horror, right? Did you ever see that?
I haven't.
Like, okay, well, like it's the same kind of thing of like the end of the day, like what undoes the society and the town or whatever is capitalism, right?
Right.
It's this obsession with like, his dad says something like, "Oh, every kid's gonna want the Peltzer pet. Let's market this thing and sell it and do it." But you don't understand it, and they touch on it in Jurassic Park. Jeff Goldblum mentions it. Like you packaged it, you boxed it, and you sold it. You did it without even thinking that you should. Like that whole thing, it's still the undoing of these societal movies of just like capitalism fucks everything at the end of the
I
day.
I love that you have the dad trying to kind of profit off of the idea of like a gremlin pet that he just bought from Chinatown. What? But then also you also immediately see like the metaphor of the gremlins as these like hedonistic consumers who are just like the ultimate like this is what society would be if
Yeah,
we
this is
completely gave in to our impulses.
this is what the liberals want. Yeah. Another '80s trope that this played on was having just like a generic Chinatown in the
Oh
area
God.
where the strange and unusual shit happens. And does it racist? Yes, it does.
It's
Yes, it 100% does.
it's racist to an almost normal degree in movies like this. It's just like, okay.
Yeah. Um, One other thing that I really loved, especially this time around, as a mature adult as I am,
Yeah.
Phoebe Cates, and you touch on this a bunch of times. Phoebe Cates is in a completely different movie. She goes about this and plays it so strangely, so earnest and truthful. Her commentary about not liking Christmas is so heartfelt and honestly so real that I really appreciate it. That, like, dude, not everyone has to be fucking happy and psyched for Christmas. Like, I don't like Christmas and I don't have to. Leave me the fuck alone, Billy.
So
And yeah,
Phoebe Cates is kind of seen in this movie through the eyes of Billy. We kind of interact with her because Billy wants to hang out with her. They work together at the bank before the Gremlins completely take over town. They're kind of like they have a few key conversations, and then they're together throughout the Gremlin takeover when they're just defeating Gremlins. But like she has a couple almost like monologue-y moments, and it's the moment where you're talking about where she talks about like why some people don't like Christmas, and she has a line that I wrote down that was just like so deeply dark in the midst of all this like mayhem. It's like while everybody else is opening up their presents, some people are opening up their wrists.
Yeah, dude. And
I
it's
just
like,
wrote,
holy
my God.
damn it. What's wrong with you? Yeah, she has that scene, and that she's saying it without saying it. She doesn't want to go into her history, which she does later, but she's like, leave me alone. I don't have to like Christmas. Some people just are really depressed around the holidays. And Billy's like, fine, whatever. Do you just want to go on a date? But then later we get this is one of my big standout scenes. So the first one is obviously Billy's mom going fucking full ham in the kitchen. The second one takes place at what I'm calling Exposition Bank when they're seeking refuge, and it's her other
Regional
monologue.
Exposition Bank.
And trust, bank and trust. It's it's her other monologue, but it takes this sharp left turn of like, you want to know why I don't like Christmas? It's because my dad died in the chimney when I was a kid.
Okay. What is your read on that scene? Because I need to know how bad to feel that I burst out laughing watching that.
I remember so seeing it the first time as like a kid growing up, like it blew past me because I was like, this is boring. They're just talking. Bring back more of the cute little monsters that are doing stuff. But as I turned into a teenager and a little bit older and watching it a bunch more times, I love this scene so much because, like you said, she's in a completely different movie, but she grounds it in that reality, and it's such a weird choice to have her bare her soul of this deep, dark moment that happened to her childhood of her dad dying, snapping his neck in the chimney.
This movie is like mostly about like the weird consumerism of Christmas when it comes to the gremlin parts, but then her bits of the movie are about like the spirituality and belief of Christmas, which I wish they followed up more on, because ultimately, like, this movie doesn't end as like a "we saved Christmas" type movie. It's more just like we got rid of those gremlins. It's not like we can finally have Christmas now. Like, this movie could have taken place at any time, but like you can see traces of that in her parts where it really just becomes like how, like we're saying, like how different people approach Christmas. And it is wacky that all of that is happening while being surrounded by gremlins taking over the town and getting up to no good and drinking and smoking and playing poker.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just having a ball out there, and she's like, you know what? Let's seek refuge in this bank, and I'm gonna bare my soul to you, Billy, and change your entire outlook on how you see me. Because they've had to have talked about that later, right? It definitely came up. You can't just sweep that under the rug.
Yeah. He's
know?
like, we're going to circle back on that next week.
But for now, we need to figure out how to deal with these monsters.
Out.
And like, that sucks. I really don't know what to say, but we need to go deal with all this other stuff. And that's the only reason they go into the bank, is to have a quiet moment, and then they leave immediately. It's very strange, but I love that it grounds her character so much. It's a super dark payoff to her previous comments of like, this is why some people don't like Christmas. It's the darkest thing, but I love it so much.
Speaking on 80s tropes, I'm kind of just going through my notes as I was watching the movie here. This movie has like an excellent version of the cop that doesn't believe the kid when all this crazy stuff is happening. So it happens in the Goonies when Chunk is calling the cops about the Fratellis.
Yeah.
And he's like, Lawrence, is that you again?
Yeah.
And he starts listing off all the times that he's like prank called the cops and he doesn't believe him.
Yep.
And then in this example, it's like a heightened level of insanity that like made me feel like I was going crazy, because like he brings Gizmo in and he's showing him to the cops, and the cops are just like, whatever. That's like
he's cute.
It might as well be a fucking dog. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. It's great. It plays for laughs, and I don't know if this is a real body count. I tried to look it up, the real body count of this movie, because
Gremlins.
yeah, there are 2 confirmed deaths but I don't know if those two cops made it out alive because that was a pretty gruesome car wreck that they
It's a
endured.
little apocalyptic at the end of this movie. Okay, so I think we have to talk about what was probably the scene that I laughed the hardest at
Tell
in
me,
this
hit
movie,
me
which
with it.
I'm thinking is death number 2 that you're talking about. So in
Mrs. Deagle,
Mrs. Deagle is the
God
wicked
rest her.
witch of this town. She seemingly controls the banks in this town somehow.
Hmm.
She's like a widow who is everyone's landlord and
Yeah.
not a single redeeming quality about her.
Nope.
The Gremlins go on their rampage of the town. So Spike or Stripe, the
Stripe.
alpha gremlin, has
Stripe.
like jumped into the pool. So there's a lot more of them now. They knock on Mrs. Deagle's door. She lives in this like big old empty, depressing mansion.
With so many cats.
The first part of this that I laughed at is that they knock on the door and she opens it and they're dressed as carolers and they're doing this like demented Christmas song to like scare her.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things where it's just like, do the Gremlins know what they're doing, or do they think this is all normal and they're just like doing it? So she screams, shuts the door, gets into, because she's kind of an older woman, gets into the chair that she uses to automatically go up her kind of large grand spiral staircase, and the the Gremlins somehow like chew on some wires to make the chair accelerate at like a Apollo
Like Mach
11
1. Mach 1.
rocket
Yeah.
speed. We we then see her shoot up this spiral staircase, screaming, perfectly flung out of the top window, and then end up literally Wicked Witch style. Do we just see like her feet
legs.
sticking
Yeah.
out of the snow at
Yeah.
that point?
Yep. That's it. And she's done. She's done for
Amazing.
it. Going so fast, Mach 1 out her fucking window and landing 100 yards away into the hard snow. She's obviously dead on impact. But yeah, I love that scene so much because it is so bizarre. And she shuts the door and she's like, they've come for me. I'm not ready. It's like, what has she done in her past that she thinks she's getting her comeuppance? So what I want to know now, we've talked about this. She is the lady who controls the bank, controls the property. Now that she's dead, what does that mean for the rest of the town?
They're all free. It's like student loan forgiveness. Like
Is that it?
they
Okay.
all start over. This town can rebuild as a utopia that is not connected to the rest of America. As
Yeah.
far as I know, this town is floating out in space on an asteroid.
This is a similar town to The Village. M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. It's just contained.
It's the Truman Show. If anyone tries to leave, they're going to get blocked one way or another.
Yeah, or shot
And
outside.
the Gremlins were just like a late season addition because the producers wanted to add something.
Yeah.
I will just say, like, in reference to the insane tonal shifts of this movie, the Christmas backstory that Phoebe Kates gives is like the very next scene after the chair scene. Like it goes from her sticking out of the snow to them in the bank, and she gives the most depressing monologue you've ever heard.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay. Well, thanks for sapping the fun out of watching the Wicked Witch just die.
But
it's a neat turn. It's a neat turn.
I did want to touch on we've kind of covered like the different like major characters. Corey Feldman's kind of in there. There's also the school teacher who he brings the initial gremlin to, who's kind of like the first kill.
Yep.
But I didn't. There were obviously some people that I did recognize in this cast, but a lot of the people seemed very specific to Gremlins. Like you're saying Phoebe Kates is like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I've never seen Fast Times.
Okay.
So this is really like my first Phoebe Kates.
Yeah.
The main character, like Billy in this movie, the teenager, was Gremlins kind of his thing. I've never really seen him in other stuff.
I think this was like his breakout role. He was kind of an unknown. I think they wanted to go with someone a little bit more established, but he and Phoebe Kates had really great on-set chemistry. So Dante and crew, they were like, let's keep this kid. But yeah, I think this was his breakout role.
Yeah, and then I did know the mom because she's the mom in the past in Back to the Future. It took me a second, but I was like, "That's who it is. It's Lorraine's mom in Back to the Future."
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
That's a good catch.
yeah.
I've always known her as Billy's mom, but
She's got a unique face, but then the dad, never seen him before. I looked him up. He's like a musician or something
oh,
like that.
yeah, he was having fun. He was just trying. He was just there for fun, you guys. You know.
And then obviously Jonathan Banks and Judge Reinhold. I just feel like there is a deleted scenes from Gremlins out there that is like Judge Reinhold getting his Gremlins comeuppance later in the film, because like he has a couple scenes with Billy where he's kind of his rival at work, and he's
He's
moving on up. He's
and
very
he's a super creep
like
to Phoebe Kates at the bar.
Reagan era womanizing capitalist,
Yep.
and then he's out of the movie. Like you don't see him again.
Yeah, so there is a deleted cut scene.
Shut up.
He was supposed to be locked somehow in the bank's vault, and he was going to have like a one-on-one with Billy.
Are you kidding?
No, like that's legit. That was supposed to happen. There, you can look
Oh.
it up. Yeah, he's supposed to be like the Gremlins like locked him in the bank in the vault or something like that, and he was supposed to like bare his soul to Billy or something like that. I don't
It
know.
feels like that.
They
is-
missed it. They missed it. But yeah, he 100% would fit in with Patrick Bateman and all that. He would just
He
get
needs
off on
some
just being.
suspenders. He needs to murder someone.
He does, but yeah, he is the super creep. But yeah, that's what happened to Judge Reinhold. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about some of the production and history about this that I dove into.
Speaking
So
facts.
yeah, this was a original story written by Chris Columbus. He wrote this. It was written as like a spec script to kind of show off to potential employers that like, hey, I have it as a screenwriter. I can do this.
Yep.
And Spielberg caught wind of it and was like, "Oh, this is super original. I'm gonna buy it. I'm just gonna scoop it up. I love this." And yeah, obviously it was a financial success, and it spurned a sequel, which I haven't seen. I haven't seen Gremlins 2, but I hear that it's even more wacky and bananas and leans into more of the absurd.
I obviously I haven't seen it either, but from what I've read, it's a little more comedic and more like parody-ish.
Yeah, like definitely tongue in cheek, leans into it a little bit. But yeah, it spurned that sequel and was a main inspiration for a lot of other kind of like creepy little miniature creature feature movies throughout the 80s, namely Ghoulies and Troll and Hobgoblins. Like just about like multiple little creatures that just wreak havoc on a town or a city or something like that.
What's the movie or series of movie where it's just like the little fuzzy balls of things with teeth, or
I think that's Ghoulies.
Ghoulies?
Yeah. So that came after this. So this kind of paved the way for that sort of thing. But yeah, we touched on, puppets and all that kind of stuff. And they used multiple puppets, marionettes, and other different ways to capture both the Mogwai and the Gremlin form.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely, so they originally, crafted the Mogwai form, the small little mechanical Gizmo and all of his compatriots. And apparently that was such a big pain in the ass. They hated working with that puppet. So when they went to create the Gremlin personas, that's why they're a little bit bigger, is because there's a little bit more armature and a little bit more range of motion, that they were a little bit easier to work with as opposed to this small little cuddly thing.
Yeah.
Um,
You can tell Gizmo's like, usually like wrapped up in a blanket or like in a box down there, because there's probably like gears
so
and
many
levers,
shit. Yeah.
right?
So many things there. Let's see. We touched on a bunch of other things too in here. The backlash and complaints of families going to see this movie because they thought it was like a feel-good Christmas movie with cute little puppets and all that kind of stuff. But then it takes this dark turn with creepy little monsters, and it just ruined people's movie-going experience. That it actually paved the way with the MPAA to create the PG-13 rating, because they needed something between R and PG. And that's why a lot of the 80s movies that are rated PG get an F-bomb or, get some tits or some weird shit in there.
It's 16 Candles. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's F-bombs and then there's like random boobs and you're just like, what the hell? This is rated PG?
Yeah. So they hadn't come up with anything yet, but this kind of helped start the conversation of like, all right, we've had enough. There needs to be something in between. PG-13. 13 is the age.
So it was Spielberg because like he had this movie and then he
And
had
Temple of Doom.
Temple of Doom in the same year, and both have like truly terrifying moments
Yeah, dude.
that should not be for 6-year-olds.
Definitely not. No. So that's a fun little thing that this movie can hang its hat on. You know, it helped bring about the PG-13 movement.
I love
Another
how
thing,
they were like, what's the age we should pick, you know?
you're like, I don't know, like fucking
Those
13.
Canada fuckers did 14. Like, let's one
Let's
up.
go. Let's bring it down a notch because we're America, you know. We touched on the merchandisability. You know, this movie did gangbusters the holiday season of 1984 with all the merchandise, the action figures,
I can
the
imagine.
plushies, and everything. Super cool stuff. Like this movie was made to market and made to merchandise. Let's see. A couple other standout scenes we kind of danced around and talked about. The Gremlins inside the movie theater is iconic. They're watching Snow White and they're loving it. They're singing the hi ho.
What a
Hi-ho.
crazy movie to pick, because like in 84, would Snow White just be like playing in the movie theaters?
No,
I
that's
guess
why.
there was a time when there like weren't a lot of VHSs and like you had to watch the theaters to watch the movies. I don't know. I don't know a time before the
I don't know,
internet.
because Snow White came out in like fucking in the 30s, in the
Right.
40s or whatever. So like it's weird that like that was playing at the theater. But then that plays into more of like, how weird is this town? You know,
It's
like that they're playing Snow White at the movie theater.
it's also fun because like you can think of these gremlins as like newly hatched, and like any sort of stimulation is good stimulation to them. So like
Yeah.
they see Snow White and they're thinking this is like the best shit they've ever seen. Like what happens when they watch like Die Hard or something like that?
I don't know,
They're
right?
going to explode.
Yeah, like they might. I don't know. Maybe that's what happens in the sequel. We need to dig into that. We need to have like a full sequel series.
Sequels, miniseries.
Yeah, of
Many
all
of the
these.
movies that we've covered had sequels.
Scream had
Oh, yeah,
one,
definitely
but that's a lost episode.
There's Devil Wears Prada 2. There's
Oh,
not
the Baby Wears Prada. Yeah,
Baby Wears Prada.
yeah. That's the sequel I wanted. But yeah, there's this one. I don't think the other ones, but we're building a catalog for sure.
Oh yeah.
And I think the fans, specifically those in Brussels, I think they would love a sequel series.
We love our fans in Brussels. Shout out to our fans in Brussels.
Yeah, yeah, dude. Hell yeah, Belgium.
Hell yeah.
Cool. So let's couple more Easter eggs. You touched about this. You know, the original script was supposed to be way darker and more depressing.
Really?
And you hinted at it. Billy's mom was supposed to be killed.
Okay.
Her head was supposed to come rolling down the stairs as Billy gets home.
So
and
this
played
this
for
would have been
comedy.
like a straight up horror movie from the
Yeah, like mom was supposed to die. Barney the dog was supposed to get eaten in a gruesome way.
Okay, come on.
And Gizmo was supposed to turn into like the stripe evil Mogwai. They could have taken this into a more horror turn, but Spielberg fought hard to like it needs to come back a little more cute. Like, trust me, I just came off of E.T. That's what
Spielberg
sells.
was kind of trying to build a brand of like slime, but for kids, you know?
Spielberg actually wanted Joe Dante and Chris Columbus to pull the Phoebe Kates monologue, and he was like, "This is too dark. This is too depressing." And Joe Dante
Like
fought
highlighted
hard.
in yellow in the script. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, triple underlined, like remove immediately, omit. He did the big circle thing, but they fought to keep it in there, and I'm glad they did because it grounds it in a weird way, like I already talked about.
It certainly gives us something to talk about, I will say.
Yeah, and one other thing, they originally this is so weird. They originally wanted to use monkeys in gremlin masks and costumes to capture the movements and
Oh,
stuff,
that
but
would be depressing.
that's so horrifying and cruel and weird. I'm glad they did.
Weirdly, one of my notes from like earlier in the film was, oh god, let me find it. Like, I was trying to figure out like in the initial stage of the Gremlins, like what their objective was, and I was like, do the Gremlins want to eat people, or is it more like a Jumanji Monkeys situation?
Yeah, they just want to cause chaos. It looks like they want
It's like they want to hijack cars and just like drive them into things, right?
Okay, so this is one bit that I really loved. So obviously the pro-patriot asshole neighbor guy, the Fetterman, Mr. Fetterman,
Yes.
who's complaining about everything, foreign cars, this and foreign parts.
Does not like the foreigners.
He doesn't, right? He's very not subtle about it. He talks about the origin of Gremlins.
Mhm.
And if you've seen the original Bugs Bunny cartoon, there's one about a gremlin that comes from World War II. Essentially, it's like the gremlins.
Like that was like the origin of this folk tale or whatever.
Yeah, and that's where they come from, right? It's a real thing. That's what they said. Like there were gremlins in the machinery that would cause it to spontaneously break down, or be faulty. And honestly, you know what? Here's a little nerd bit for you, Joe. That's where the inception of UX came from.
Shut up.
User experience came from
Dig
World War II and
into
airplanes.
that.
Yeah. Dig into that. It's great. That's the only surface level I can get. It came from war times and building airplanes, honestly, specifically.
So you're saying the term user experience came from that period of building these machines.
I don't know if the term, but the practice of like how to make something usable for multiple people and ease came from that. Of like airplanes are notorious for having like crazy control panels and things like that. And it was just like, how do we make this streamlined across the board for people to use?
Listeners, for anyone new here, Justin is a famous user experience designer as his day job.
And Joe is also a famous user experience manager, also in his day job. So how about that? Just crossing bridges right here,
And we have a film podcast.
This is great. I know, it's so fun. But yeah, so the whole origin of Gremlins being in the machinery and all that kind of stuff, Mr. Fetterman, brings up that lore. And throughout the movie, you kind of see them play into that a little bit. Like when they get into Mrs. Deagle's house and they kind of fuck with the machinery on her chair, like they're just being gremlins about it.
Or there's a whole sequence where they take over like a snowplow, and
it's the Fetterman's
guy's house.
Yeah, it's Mr. Fetterman's snowplow that has foreign parts in it. Those fucking foreigners, that kind of thing. Like they're playing into the machinery aspect, and I wish they would have played that up just a little bit more. Of like they know technology, they know electricity, they know how to do the shit.
I do like the idea of like this whole movie came from like a concept of like things fucking with machines. How do we build a story and characters around that?
Yeah, they Joe Dante and Chris Columbus and Steven Spielberg went this way. James Cameron went a different way with the machines. He went the other route of doomsday and the apocalypse.
Well, this is the year of Terminator 1.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the Terminator I haven't seen. We can put that on the list.
Yeah, we'll put that on there. It's great. Yeah, so that's kind of the long and short of this movie. There's other standout bits that I love. The alien callback that you mentioned. Billy's mom hearkening back to Ripley. The original Alien came out in 1979. Aliens came out in 1986. So there's definitely some parallel there of her being like this badass female character.
So wait, both of those initial Alien movies were after this movie?
1979 was the original
79.
Alien. Was the original Alien. Aliens, the sequel, came out in 1986.
Because like it was like spooky, like how similar, like it's crazy Ripley vibes.
Definitely with the short curly hair, you definitely
maybe that's just the haircut of the age. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it was the 80s, man. It was a wild time. Cocaine was everywhere.
Yeah, and then the dad inventor guy being completely clueless, and also he spends most of this movie at the most 80s inventor convention you've ever seen. There's like large robots like walking around instead of like an iPhone. Yeah. It's like this thing is like a home helper, and it's like the size of a truck.
Yeah, it's really weird. He's in a weird field, definitely. One other note that I wanted to call out. So when Mr. Peltzer goes to Chinatown to find his son a gift, he finds himself in this weird shop. He drops $200 on this fucking Mogwai. So, knowing what we know about the family, he's the breadwinner, but he's down on his luck. He hasn't sold anything in a long time. He's not that great of an inventor.
How's his family make money?
Yeah, how do they make money? And he can just throw around $200 willy-nilly.
He is not good at money.
$1984.
Yeah.
$200 back then is equivalent to almost $600 now.
That's what I was going to say. Like, that's an insane amount.
Just that you can just drop on a whim to buy a thing for your son who already has a dog, right?
He saw this fuzzy thing, and I was like, I'm not going to test if my son's allergic to it. I need it now.
Give it to me.
Is this sacred to your culture? I don't give a shit.
Here's
it to me.
$200.
Yeah.
I'm going to hoodwink you. I'm going to try and sell you this shitty thing.
Money talks, bullshit walks.
That's right. Get to step in. And they did. Joe, before we get into the end games, do you got any other closing thoughts or arguments that you want to talk about Gremlins?
I had 3 closing notes.
Gimme.
All caps at the end of my notes. What is the lesson here? Why is the dad narrating this? Why was Judge Reinhold in this?
Okay, let's start with the last one. Why was Judge Reinhold in this? I don't know. He was kind of the it guy in the 80s for a second, and he had a cool name. I think that's honestly it.
Can I say I only ever experienced Judge Reinhold through the Santa Claus movies, and in my first foray into like Wikipedia and like figuring out like the actual names of actors and things, I was like, why is there a judge playing a role in this movie? Because my brain could not accept that someone was named Judge.
Yeah, his parents looked at him and said, "You're a judge."
Yeah, you ever held up a baby and say like, this looks like a judge?
Yeah, so much so that I'm going to name you Judge.
Yeah. And even Reinhold just sounds like a large stone structure, like Judge Reinhold.
Yeah.
And then it's this kind of meekish white guy.
Yeah. And that's all it is. It's very weird.
It's kind of perfect.
It's great. So why is the dad narrating this? I have no idea.
This movie bookends with this clueless dad who arguably does not know his son narrating the movie.
Yeah. Who's he talking to?
It kind of ends with like, well, you know, that's what happens when you go to Chinatown.
Yeah, it's so weird. Why is he narrating? Why did
and
they
the
feel
bank, like explodes in the distance? Like, who knows?
Like, why were they trying to make the dad like the narrator? Like, that doesn't make any sense. They should have made Billy the narrator, or fucking make Corey Feldman. He's
It's
just
insane.
like
I texted you right as this movie was starting because I was watching it by myself, and it starts in Chinatown. And him kind of walking around looking for like presents, and he looks like a private eye for whatever reason. And I texted you, I was like, is this are they filming a movie in a movie? And is it going to turn out like this guy's like an actor or something?
Yeah.
That's
maybe.
what it felt like. Someone was going to like call cut or something.
Yeah. I bet there's a big payoff in the sequel that we'll have to explore. Because I looked ahead, because when I tried to look up the body count, I was like, oh, the Fettermans and, Mr. Fetterman and his wife obviously bit the dust with the snowplow coming in. But
the
apparently
body count,
they make a
body count, yeah.
They make an appearance in the sequel. So they make it out alive. So I want to know what their story is.
Yeah, I think the sequel, one of the things I know about Gremlins is like that one GIF of like the female gremlin and like the blonde wig. I think that's from the sequel, even though there is like one female gremlin in this movie.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. We didn't talk about the bar scene, but it is so standout of the chaos of them just like smoking and drinking and playing pool, and like there's like the one really cool cat like gremlin who has the hat and the sunglasses. He's just listening to jazz, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the other weird one that always gets a laugh out of me. It's the ski mask wearing one with the pistol.
Oh my God, they're little pistols that came up throughout this movie. They're guns, but they're like miniature.
There's tiny pistols. It's hilarious.
Where did they get these?
It's so much fun. But Joe, I'm glad you had a good time with this movie, and I hope it got you into the Christmas spirit. I know it did for me. This movie will always be a Christmas movie to me, just because of the time of year that I always caught this movie on like TBS or MTV or VH1 or whatever it came on.
Yeah.
Many times that I saw it. It's a Christmas movie through and through for me, even though it is a little spooky, a little weird, a little kooky, a little creature feature.
we talked about like the Chris Columbus connection here, and I think he is very much considered like a Christmassy guy. So he's got Gremlins, he's got Home Alone, obviously, but then like you think of the first two Harry Potters in particular, and a lot of
Christmas.
people say like those kind of count as Christmas movies. Like it obviously
definitely do.
changes with the third one because it completely shifts in terms of like
Tone.
style and aesthetic, but like
Yeah.
the first two are very Christmassy.
Definitely they are 100%. Yeah. Yeah, maybe he's got a penchant for Christmas. The dude just loves that holiday season, you know?
Who doesn't, you know?
He needs those
Not Phoebe
JINGLE bells, you know?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's get into the end games, Joe.
I am terrified.
I've prepared some fun stuff for you. So I wanted to do something different. So we're going to play what I'm calling Name That Cryptid.
Name That Cryptid.
So I couldn't come up with the right name. So we got Name That Cryptid that we're going to play. But I also wanted to take a different approach. I wanted to say, does it cryptid? So I came up with something completely different. So I definitely stuck with Name That Cryptid. So
for any listeners out there, Justin had way too much time on his hand this past week and animated a full segment for each of those musical interludes.
Yep. I had fun with it, Joe. That's what I do. That's what I do with my time. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to play Name That Cryptid, not Does It Cryptid. This one's a little softer. This is Name That Cryptid.
Okay.
So
to be clear, when we say cryptids, we're talking about like little like folktale monster-y type things.
Yeah, so folklore, mythical creatures, and urban legends of the sorts have existed in the human story for hundreds of thousands of years.
Okay.
Right? So each comes with their own set of rules, unique features, guidelines, and things like that. So this is what I'm going to do, Joe. I'm going to give you the descriptions and a set of several rules or guidelines or whatever to some of these folklore creatures, cryptids, or persons or whatever, and I want you to tell me which one they're tied to.
Okay.
Cool? Is that all right?
Am I just giving you an answer, or is it like a multiple choice thing?
This is going to be multiple choice. So I'm going to give you a list of things, and then I'm going to give you your multiple choice. Is that cool?
Yeah, I'm going to dominate this.
All right, so let's get into it.
Name That Cryptid.
All right, welcome back to Name That Cryptid, folks. Here we are, Joe. Question number 1. This creature is Fey in origin. Fey in origin. There are Norse roots, particularly in Northern Europe. They are a collector of bones, some can say. Collector of bones. Now, some of the rules or guidelines tied to this creature. Never say thank you. Don't stand inside of a natural formed mushroom circle from this creature.
Okay.
So, am I talking about the Slender Man, the Tooth Fairy, or the Wendigo?
It's definitely not Slender Man. I was going to say fairy of some sort, but Tooth Fairy seems too different, so I'm going to say Wendigo.
You should have stick with your first instinct there. That's the Tooth Fairy. Tooth
No
Fairy
way.
is a fairy, fey in origin, has its Norse roots. They collect bones.
Oh, I totally forgot the collect bones bit.
Yep. You got to pay attention to these things, Joe. Question number 2. We got a blood drinker.
Okay.
Blood drinker on our hands. Reported sightings range from Latin America into the U.S.
Okay.
Described as small, reptilian, or dog-like.
I already know what this is. Keep going.
Some of the rules: be sure to put away your livestock at night,
Mhm.
bandage the wounded,
Mhm.
bring inside your pets.
Uh-huh.
Am I talking about the Mongolian death worm, the Jersey devil, or the chupacabra?
You're talking about the chupacabra.
Damn right I am. All right. Joe got one.
I love
Here
that
we
one.
go. Question number 3. This creature is large bipedal creature. A large bipedal creature. purported to inhabit the Himalayan mountain range in northern Asia,
Okay.
and may also be related to the Bigfoot himself.
Alex, is there a Disney roller coaster associated with this creature?
Who
Sorry.
knows? Who knows? The rules are avoid the mountain slopes at nighttime. Am I talking about the Yowie? Am I talking about the Yeti? Or am I talking about the Mothman?
The only rule is to avoid the mountain slope at nighttime.
Yeah.
I believe it is the Yeti.
That would be correct. We're talking about the Yeti, folks. Question number 4. You're doing great so far. You got 2 out of 3. Question number 4. This creature mourns children whom they've drowned.
Oh.
They are known also as the Weeping Woman or the Wailer.
Okay.
And if the cries seem close, they're far away. But if the cries seem distant, they are near. Beware. The rules: don't wander off in the dark, especially near bodies of water. Am I talking about the Beast of Bodmin Moor, Bloody Mary, or La Llorona?
Those rules seem just like general good rules to follow in general. It is definitely La Llorona.
Correct. You nailed it. Having grown up in South Texas, I can tell you that folklore is alive and well. Scared the shit out of me as a kid.
Is it like Hispanic in origin?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep, it is terrifying. Look it up. La Llorona is terrifying.
Yeah, there's a relatively recent whole ass movie about it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. But here we go. Last question, number 5. Save yourself. Get 4 out of 5, Joe.
Okay.
This creature is often conjured to reveal the future or your demise.
Ooh.
It is best witnessed in group participation play.
Okay.
And the origin could be linked to a real historical figure, a number of historical figures, in fact.
Okay.
Some of the rules: don't look into the mirror alone at night. Am I talking about Bloody Mary, the Candyman, or the Lady in White?
Oh, you bastard, because it's the mirror thing applies to multiple. I would say I've never seen the Candyman movies. I'm going to say Bloody Mary.
You would be correct.
Okay. Woo.
There are ties to historical people. Mary, Elizabeth, or whoever.
That's what got me. But the Candyman also
does something similar.
Stuff,
Yeah. So
Okay.
You got 4 out of 5 there, Joe.
Okay.
You did pretty good in Name That Cryptid.
Name that cryptid.
All right,
I
Joe.
would love to see how you can possibly bring that animation and musical cue back in future episodes.
I think I might reuse it, or I might reuse the other one. Does it Cryptid? Yeah. So I had fun with that one. I didn't know I could do that in metal. I didn't know I could scream like a metalhead. That's really cool.
That sounded really great. That was you?
Yeah.
Justin, that
And
like-
same with Name That Cryptid. You know, I did the whole thing. It was so much fun.
listeners might not know that you have a musical career, but like
The viewers will know because they can see the musical instruments behind me.
Yeah, there you go.
So there you go, Joe. You got 4 out of 5 on Name That Cryptid. I'm very proud of you. And I'm glad you came along with me on this journey. I promise, not every single movie that I bring to this podcast is going to have a horror flair to it. It just so happens that those are the movies you haven't seen.
I feel like a lot of the movies that you bring are like really like key parts of culture, especially from like the 80s and 90s. And I'm really glad I'm like get to cover like my blind spots there. Like,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
am building it out. I tend to focus more on like the 2000s and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And you're obviously like 20 years older than me.
Fuck you. 10 years older, you ass. Wait, no, I'm not even that much older than you.
You're like 5 years.
5, yeah. So fuck you. You know what? That's a good point. We do try to cover each other's blind spots pretty well in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next conversation that we're going to have next week. Yes, that's right, folks. We're going to do a back-to-back episode next week, just in time for Christmas to get your Yule on. We're going to be talking about A Christmas Story. which is a
Justin,
movie I've never seen before.
Justin has never seen A Christmas Story, and I am very excited to show him because I don't know how much he knows about it, but it
I
may take
know
him by surprise.
I know very little, but I'm excited for that one to round out the year, the Yuletide cheer, and then as we get into 2023, I'm pretty excited for kind of what we have planned. We've got some new things, some new angles, and definitely some new conversations that we're going to take over the next year as we kind of explore on how to grow uncultured cinematic universe in the best way possible. But Joe, thanks for coming along. I had a blast. I hope you did too. And you got any final thoughts? One last phrase to send to our folks?
Nothing at all. Let me know when you want to watch Gremlins 2.
Hell yeah, we'll add it to the catalog. Great. Thank you guys for joining us. A pleasure as always. Catch us later at UCU Podcast on Instagram and wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out on YouTube. See you guys later.